Welcome back to Studio F on Fast Times Willy B. We'll be reviewing The Exorcist III. Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Russell!
Welcome back to Fast Times Willy B. I'm Willy B. I've got Rosie with me. Rosie, how are we doing?
Good, glad to be back.
So today we'll be talking about The Exorcist III. Came out in 1990, directed by William Peter Blatty, who is also the writer of the books that these movies are based on. He steps into the director's chair for this one. This is only one of two movies he's directed, and I've heard great things about his other one. I think it's called The Ninth Configuration. So maybe we'll look into that one. But nonetheless, we're here for The Exorcist III. We've got George C. Scott playing our main character, Bill, who's lieutenant of the police force in Georgetown. We've got Brad Dourif in this movie, which was really nice to see. We got Jason Miller back as Father Karras, and a bit of a different take on him, which we'll get into. But we'll start with the good. And now this is a sequel. So this movie...
Much better. It's not even a sequel, but yes.
Well, it completely disregards the second one. So it's titled The Exorcist III, but it's basically...
The second one.
The People's Exorcist II.
Right.
This is the version of post-Exorcist we want.
Yeah.
So it's, you know... How far after did they say? 15 years after the McNeil incident. And this movie is following a couple murders happen at the beginning of this movie, and Lieutenant's trying to figure out, including his buddy who was a priest. Two priests go down, and then a kid that was a kid cop, part of that group. And so he knew all three of them, and it was following the same murders that happened 15 years ago, and that was the Gemini killer, where the killer takes the index finger. The killer puts the Gemini symbol on the palm of the left hand and decapitates the victim. And all three of the murders match that way, but the Gemini killer was put to death row 15 years ago. So it's causing all of this confusion, and then we find out that there's, in cell 11, there's an inmate, ends up being Father Karras, and you're like, what is going on?
Yeah, that was quite the shock factor for sure.
So great twist there, and then that's where you find out that the Gemini killer's soul entered the body of Father Karras as his soul was leaving, and the Gemini killer is played by Brad Dourif. Now, this was probably my favorite performance I have seen from Brad Dourif. Obviously, love him as the voice of Chucky. I love him in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but man...
Yeah, that was a really intense...
The acting we get in Cell 11 from Brad Dourif...
That was quite intense.
...was eerie, unsettling, tense, and one of my favorite performances, in a horror film.
Yeah, it was done real well. It really had you locked in. Even though most of what he was saying was, absolute madness and, meant, nothing really, he was just talking because, what else does he have to do? He's chained to the ground and in a straitjacket, but he's just...
Changes his voice.
It is creepy. Yeah. Very, very creepy.
The fluctuation of voice is really good, but he's basically, when he puts Father Karras' body to sleep, his brain's at work controlling somebody else to carry out these Gemini killer murders for him. At first, it is done through... one of the guys that works at the hospital, but he ends up killing himself, and then he tries to use a nurse to kill Bill's daughter.
Right.
The exorcism scene we get in Cell 11 is intense, especially with, the priest being sent up and his skin getting ripped off by the ceiling.
I hated that so much.
And then, obviously, the final showdown between Bill and Father Karras' possessed body, and where we get Father Karras, now, and you meet the demise, but... this is, when it comes to story and plot, this honestly I liked as much as the original Exorcist.
Yeah, we're just going to forget the second one happened.
Yes.
And continue along down this path, which I think is much better.
Now,
I liked the connections between the first and third one. And we get a little couple of flashbacks here and there, which I liked, and I don't know. Yeah. It was just much, we saw his name better.
Pop on the screen, and I was like...
Yeah. And we were like, oh, it's flashbacks.
Yeah. No, he's in it. Yeah, I like this one a lot. Very good story. It had me locked in the whole time. Very well paced. The shortest movie of the three, and you can feel that for sure. Mm-hmm. Now, on the technical side, some things weren't all there, and we'll get into that. But, I mean, this movie looked really well. The direction was really good. Mm-hmm. So, shout out to Blatty. Obviously, very well written, and that also goes back to him. He wrote, the first one. And, yeah, I mean, everything that falls in the story and plot and basically acting, I didn't have any grips on any of the performances, falls in that good. It has a really good, jump scare type scene, and that's where the guy in all white chasing the nurse with shears when she turns the corner. Creepy. Very, very good jump scare. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is easily, I mean... I've seen a lot of horror movies, and I feel like I can safely say that this is, top 50 all time for me. Oh. And I know top 50 doesn't sound great, but when you've seen the amount of horror movies I've seen, top 50 is a hell of a feat.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's too far behind the first one. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I mean, I like that the story continued on, and we got some new characters, which was nice, and it's kind of cool because they were around during the they knew the whole thing.
How they connected everything was really good.
The connection, because sometimes even with movies that have a sequel or however many movies they have, sometimes the connections can kind of get lost in translation. You're like, well, how did they know that, or how did they, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this one did a really good job at even though we didn't see the lieutenant in the first one, he was still aware, he was there.
Yeah.
So he was aware of what was going on, and the same with most of the other the other fathers and stuff in the church. So they did a good job at making sure there was no plot holes, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was pretty nice.
My two favorite scenes were probably the hospital scene where we get I love the camera angle too, when it's just down the hallway and you see them walk across the screen. That was one of my favorite scenes, and the other one is the confessional box murder.
Yeah, that was wild.
Just you're watching the father the whole time just listen to this confession, and it's just the waitress by Candlestick Park, and in that demonic voice, and then the screams, and then crime scene.
I really thought she probably was, but the lady in the black lace.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But that was very good as well. Just most of this movie's in the good.
Mm-hmm, I would say.
Anything else for you in the good?
I think we touched on it all. If I think of anything else,
we get Tubular Bells.
I was gonna say
we get Tubular Bells again at the
yes.
The intro to this movie was really good. Mm-hmm. Great hook, and then title card over the stairs with Tubular Bells. Chef's kiss. Thank you. But we'll hop over to the meh, and I only have two meh. I don't have anything in the bad.
Okay, I don't think I do either.
Is awesome, but the two meh I have is at points the editing was rough. There were especially...
I remember you mentioning it, but I don't remember where exactly.
The one scene where it stuck out was when the lieutenant... What was it? Oh, I had it in my head. There was one where it was really choppy, and it was a quick cut in scene and quick out, and I was like, that wasn't very well edited.
Yeah.
And then my other meh is the sound. There were whenever somebody got loud, especially when the lieutenant was yelling, you could hear it blow out. So that's really it, though.
Yeah.
Everything else wasn't the good for me, whether it's the technical side or the story. Just those two technicalities I didn't get behind. I guess another meh I throw in there is just because it's funny. The scene where they discover the priest is dead in the hospital. The guy taking photos is taking photos of him while he's covered up by the sheet. So I don't know what he's taking photos of.
I think he was taking photos of the jar.
Maybe.
His blood jar. And
but he had it angled at the bed, and they pat him down, and he was like, okay. And I was like, what were you taking pictures of?
I think he was taking pictures of the jars of blood.
But, yeah. That's really it for me.
Yeah.
What do you got in the Met?
The only thing I have in the Met, and it's really nitpicky, and I wasn't even going to mention it, and because they were in there such a short amount of time, but the lieutenant's wife, I don't know.
You didn't like her?
No. I thought her mouth was off.
Okay.
But maybe if we rewatch it, I will not think so.
Yeah.
But the first time she spoke, I like kind of sat up and I was like, am I I don't know. I just didn't think her acting was the best.
That's fair. That's fair.
I know you mentioned the acting really good, and I can totally agree with that. But
I mean, she's not a big enough role to like, yeah.
She wasn't. But like...
Is that a windstorm? Ohio.
That was scary.
So we'll hop to our final thoughts and ratings then. Mm-hmm. What do you want to leave off with The Exorcist 3 and what do you give it out of 10?
You don't have any bad?
No.
Okay. I don't think so. I don't think I have either. Just making sure we're...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to run your show.
No, what do you got?
Oh, I don't have anything in the bad.
No, final thoughts.
Oh, final thoughts. Let's see. I mean, I'm glad I'm happy to be watching all of them. I mentioned that even in the second one when it was a total not good. But I really, really like this one. I'm not much for an older movie. You know that. Like, I think my genre is like,
in your lifetime?
Yeah. Like,
this one only missed you by 8 years, but...
Yeah. Well, that's crazy. But, I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I'm glad we finally got some answers and some more interesting story.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you have to give it a decent score. I'm not going to rate it as high as the first one, just because I feel like the first one is the first one, and it is... I mean, we both gave it a...
Yeah.
A pretty high score. So, I'm going to go a little bit lower for this one, but I still am going to give it an 8.
Okay. For me, I'm glad they went with a different demon. I loved the Gemini killer storyline in that, being a demon rather than naming Reagan's demon and
that was not good.
The horror we get in the second movie. But I really like that. I love the look of Father Karras too when he's possessed with the eyes, and I think they did that well again. I love the shock value of bringing Father Karras back, and he's Brad Dourif, one of my favorite performances there. But there are some technical flaws in this movie that kind of break things up and like make you chuckle. So I can't give it a 10, but I'm going to go 9 out of 10. Did love this movie.
That's nice.
I still give the crown to that first one, but this one, I mean, I think if it was done a little better on the technical side with sound and editing, I think I might have liked this one more than the first one. It's just those things kind of threw me off a little bit. But yeah, very, very great sequel. Much worth the watch. Honestly, just skip the second one if you're thinking about diving into the Exorcist.
I mean, honestly, there is nothing that goes along with it. Like, there's no because the second one mostly is about Reagan and her story furthering, and there's nothing. I mean, they mention her name and they know about her, so I don't know. But definitely worth the watch for sure. You were not missing anything by missing the second one. Yeah, great movie. That'll do it for Exorcist 3. Rosie, thank you for coming on. No problem. Thank you all for watching. If you like what you're watching, check out some other videos. Hit the subscribe button or follow social links. Go back and check out Exorcist 1 and 2 if you haven't already. Let us know what you think of the original 3 Exorcist films. Maybe later down the road we'll dive into the prequels and Exorcist Believer, but we're going to stop it here for the now. Again, thank you all for watching. We'll talk to y'all soon. Peace. Peace and love.